What is up, guys? MeatyLock here, and today we are doing an interview with the Saurian devs, and it's we cover a lot of things about mating and breeding and just like life cycles and a lot of stuff. I just want to say a personal thank you to all the Saurian devs who are actually meeting with me and talking with me, and there's a lot of information about the game in this video. Now, I just want to say before the video starts, make sure if you're interested in Saurian, check out their Kickstarter. There's going to be a link down below in the description and also in the comments to the Kickstarter. They also have a public Discord that you guys can join, and you can be like, hey, devs, ask them questions and stuff like that. Of course, they're busy, so don't, bother them too much. They're trying to develop a game. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and let the video start. I just want to tell you guys about the Kickstarter, and I hope you enjoy the interview. Now, the interview is very casual. Like, I've never done an interview before, so it's very casual, and they're all really, really cool guys.
This is Half Jack.
Hey,
hey, what's up?
Not much, man.
Half Jack is our tech artist and kind of all around jack of all trades. Terrible pun, I know.
Nope. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you do? Like, what's your job title?
Mine?
Yeah, yours.
I am the project lead.
Okay.
You're talking to the originator of the idea.
He's the boss
Okay.
man. Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
No.
Nice.
They call me a boss man. I don't really think of myself that way.
Boss man. Yeah, so I guess my first question really is, can you give like a brief overview of what the game is kind of like about, like what your goals are with the game?
All right. So basically in Saurian, your goal is basically, or the whole focus of gameplay is basically living the life of a dinosaur. And kind of more specifically, living the life of a dinosaur in the most accurate representation of a prehistoric environment we can create. So basically, if you wanted to boil it down to a very simple description of what you're doing, you're eating, drinking, don't die. Eat, drink, don't die is basically the very core of the game. What kind of makes it more interesting than just that repetition of filling stats like hunger, thirst, and making sure that you monitor your stamina is that we're setting this in a very challenging ecosystem. That's something that we can actually do now that we've hit a couple of our stretch goals.
I was going to say, speaking of your stretch goals, a lot of people were curious. I know Kickstarters, the way they normally work is even if people don't hit their stretch goals, that's still something they want to eventually achieve. They just can't do it quite as fast. Are you guys planning on still doing everything that's a part of your stretch goals, like eventually, even if you don't hit them?
I think we wouldn't have listed all the goals we have if we didn't think there was, a feasible chance of us doing them. When we essentially first launched our Kickstarter, we capped off at $105,000 or $205,000 stretch goal, and that was for VR support.
Oh, okay.
And we've since stretched that into a $300,000 goal for the 2 medicine formation, which is a whole brand new ecosystem with new dinosaurs, new playables, new challenges to experience via the environment. And at 400,000, we're looking at console support.
Oh, okay.
And really what this boils down to is that, I think depending on how the Kickstarter goes, all of those goals are basically things that can be achieved. It's just a matter of how much priority we can put on it. And kind of one of the things that Half Jack can almost explain better than I can is that I don't think most people have an understanding of just how expensive taking an indie game from a PC platform to a console platform is. I mean, that's one of the things that Half Jack just basically sat us down, and I mean, you can basically tell him what you told us.
It's a little bit more complicated than what folks think. You have, for example, you have to pay for if you're using Unity, you have to pay for the console kit or the kit for the given console system that you're building for. Then you have to negotiate with the company that owns the console, and that's the tricky part, to be allowed to use your game, their game distribution network. The companies I've worked for, that was actually the stuff that took the longest amount of time.
So
then,
are you guys primarily focusing on Steam or PC right now, and then maybe eventually if you can go into Xbox or PS4 or anything like
Exactly.
that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Right now, our primary focus is on basically a PC and Mac release because Half Jack is
Mhm.
definitely a Mac guy,
Yeah.
and
Believe it or not.
that's a big advantage actually because I mean that gives you that you can broaden your platform instantly just because development is happening right now on both PC and Mac.
Yeah. Definitely.
And after that, we are definitely very strongly looking at a Linux release, and everything beyond that kind of is just a matter of how well we can do either via Kickstarter or by game sales down the road.
Yeah.
We're definitely not like opposed to console release or anything like that. It's just it's such a big resource.
Yeah.
It
And you
has such a
got
high resource demand. It's you got to basically pace yourself and make sure that you're doing what's best for the whole game, not just what would be nice in the short term.
Yeah, so you're just focusing on getting it ready, making it a game, and getting it out on Steam and stuff. I have a question actually. Do you have any plans for mod support at all? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this is the type of game that would be good for that or not, but I feel like mod support on games definitely makes it feel like it lasts longer because you have a lot of talented people in the community that are really passionate about the game, and they add all kinds of crazy stuff.
I think that's one of those things that we're a bit hesitant. I wouldn't say hesitant, but mod support is not something that we're focusing on primarily at this
Yeah.
stage of development. That there's just been so much work that we have put into making sure that the dinosaurs, how they move, their behaviors, how they look, and the ecosystem that they are a part of is as close to scientific data as we can make it. That in some regards this game feels kind of like it mod support would have to be done very carefully, as it's kind of to preserve that original intent
Mm-hmm.
behind it. And go ahead, Half Jack.
I was just saying, it would sort of spoil the overall intent of what we're trying to do
Yeah.
if in the middle of this incredibly accurate recreation, you have a guy riding a giant penis monster across
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. I was just really curious. I had a lot of questions about mod support.
Yeah, and I know that's a popular question for us, like in other places too. And I guess it's not that we are opposed to it. I think it's one of those things. We've got a lot of game ahead of us to make sure that works before we worry about letting people tinker with it too much.
Yeah. So a minute ago, you mentioned other places with other creatures. So I know right now you're working on Hell Creek, and that. So I guess my question would be: only the creatures that were actually in Hell Creek is going to be the only creatures you can actually play, right?
Yes, in this initial version of the game, we started out with 4 playable dinosaurs. You could play as Dakotaraptor, Pachycephalosaurus, Triceratops, and Tyrannosaurus. Just in the past 2 days, our Kickstarter backers have been generous enough that we've been able to unlock 2 more playables. And once the Kickstarter is concluded, everybody who's pledged to it will have an opportunity to vote on a pool of about 5 or 6 animals that we've already looked at an earlier stage of development and thought these ones can be taken from AI or NPC members of the ecosystem and expanded into a full playable the way that the initial 4 were. But yes, kind of to answer your question, every animal, every plant in this game, when you're walking around inside the world, uh, has fossil evidence of being neighbors. They all live
Okay.
together in one ecosystem, and that's something that's kind of unique amongst dinosaur games and a lot of dinosaur media in general. There's a lot of there's even like a whole, I don't know if you ever have frequented TV tropes, but there's a trope called anachronism stew, and it's just basically this idea that and it applies to dinosaurs a lot, that people often pick and choose dinosaurs from millions of years apart or different continents and wind up portraying them as living together. And that's something that we actually don't have to do in this instance because all of our animals are actually part of one ecosystem.
Do you plan on adding all of the creatures over time eventually to the Hell Creek ecosystem, or are you only planning on specific ones and then maybe just not add like some of the other ones?
At this point, the way that we've kind of broken it down is that the largest determining factor in whether or not we've included an animal is size,
Mm-hmm.
and secondly, how much actual fossil data we have about them. So the smallest animal that we have in the game right now, and it will probably remain the smallest animal we have, is a little lizard called Chamops. And our programmer Henry really likes Chamops because it was one of the first AIs he wrote for it. Its AI is kind of affectionately called Scuttlebuns, and all this thing. All Scuttlebuns basically does is whenever it detects any other animal, it basically bolts as far away as it can.
Oh,
And
okay.
so when you add it on this little lizard model, it's kind of this really really funny little thing, and this little lizard darting all over the place.
Yeah, it's a
And
little skittish.
Yep, but in the real world, Chamops was a lizard, kind of a lot like, rather similar to Tegu, if anyone knows what that is, and it was about 80 centimeters long. And we've found through experimentation that anything smaller than that, especially if you're playing an animal that's human-sized or larger, just sort of disappears into the ecosystem. It's very, very, very hard to detect.
Yeah.
And one of the things we know about Hell Creek is that there were a lot of creatures living there besides dinosaurs. There are, dozens of different species of mammals. There's over a dozen different types of birds.
Turtles.
Yes, lots of turtles.
Do you have any plans for any mammals at all?
We are looking to include a couple different species of mammals. We've purposely focused again on the ones that are large enough that they're not going to get lost if you're playing even at something like Dakotaraptor or Pachycephalosaurus sized animals.
Yeah.
You got to understand that at this point in time, most mammals are rat size or smaller, like like shrews.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
The biggest mammal in Hell Creek is a little animal called Didelphodon. And if anyone's ever seen Walking with Dinosaurs, it's a little thing that's like eggs in the last episode. And Didelphodon is probably somewhere about the size of a large cat or a badger. And that for an animal or for a mammal during the age of dinosaurs, that's actually quite large. It's significantly larger than most other mammals during the entire 150 million years that dinosaurs were dominant. So,
And you're gonna have like other maps eventually, like from other time periods or just different areas and stuff like that as well, with different creatures.
our base map is basically focused on a specific fossil location from South Dakota called Bone Butte. And I see Henry just popped into the call. Henry's favorite nickname for Bone Butte is Bony Butts. So, but basically, our first map is focused on Bone Butte, and we've explored the option of doing a larger map based in Hell Creek, but also that's where kind of our $300,000 stretch goal comes into play. Is that if we hit that, we can actually look at doing a new ecosystem, and the one that we're initially looking at doing is called the Two Medicine Formation. And the Two Medicine Formation is from about 10 million years before the Hell Creek Formation. So there's very similar dinosaurs there, but they're also very, distinct in their appearance, and they have different character to them than the ones that we've already focused on. And a map set in the Two Medicine ecosystem would have a lot of different environmental factors at play. The Two Medicine is heavily influenced by volcanic eruptions. It's also much drier than the Hell Creek Formation was, so there's less water. There's frequent droughts, and all of these things are offering different experiences than you could get in the Hell Creek, but with a lot of familiar concepts in there, I guess you could
Yeah.
say.
I guess I have to ask just because so many people asked me to ask you guys. Are you planning on adding any environments maybe in the future with like the Quetz or the Spino or anything like that? I mean, I know the Spino is. I mean, you guys probably get 1,000 questions. So
Yeah, that's like a running joke for us at this
Yeah.
point because of how many people ask us about Spinosaurus. We talked
Yeah.
about the Hell Creek Spinosaurus.
Yeah,
As long as we're in America, there's not going to be a Spinosaurus.
okay,
And
yeah,
I think
Yeah.
we can say that definitively.
Yeah. Now, who knows? Like
Mhm.
way down the line, we might want to do a. Well, is Spino Asian?
Is it
Spinosaurus
African?
is from North Africa,
Oh,
and
okay.
one of the things that I think is kind of maybe not terribly well known amongst the general public is that we don't actually know a whole lot about Spinosaurus. We have enough bits and pieces of it to get a rough idea of what it looked like, but anybody who's paid a little bit of attention to Spinosaurus in particular over the past couple of years, we've gone from an animal that's like this big heron-like animal that's got kind of long legs and a long snout and is wading along the edge of rivers catching fish to something that is suddenly a quadruped that's walking around on its knuckles as the only four-legged theropod or quadrupedal theropod we've ever discovered, to plenty of people going, well, that's not really right either. We know it had really short legs, but maybe it wasn't even capable of walking on land. The formations that Spinosaurus is found in are really not that good at preserving complete fossil specimens. So I think we're going to have to let science kind of do a bit
Evolve.
more catching up with what they know about Spinosaurus and its ecosystem before we can really think about treating at least Spinosaurus itself as a serious topic for a game
Yeah.
like Saurian.
Yeah. Also, to not just to, I think I always get a chuckle whenever people bring up Spinosaurus and Saurian, but cats is kind of a different issue because there probably were. I mean, we are going to have Quetzalcoatlus in the game, but just the main reason why we're not really considering that right now is that it just moved so fast when it flew that it would fly over even a large map that we made really, really fast.
Yeah,
So the case for Quetzalcoatlus and Mosasaurus, two or other aquatic reptiles, would be that if we were going to make them playable, it would basically be an entirely new game.
Okay.
yeah, that's kind of one of those things that I don't think is widely known, but we've known for a while is that scientists recently have done studies on giant pterosaurs like Quetzalcoatlus, and just based on their calculations from the available fossils, you're talking about an animal that can fly something like 12,000 miles without stopping. A Quetzalcoatlus would have no problem flying from London to Las Vegas and then getting to Chicago and realize it forgot its wallet and I have to fly all the way back to London without stopping. And we're talking about an animal that has a cruising speed, like basically when it's just flying lazily at somewhere between 60 and 70 miles an hour. This
Yeah.
thing is like it's a fighter jet of an animal, if you can consider that. And it's really cool, but it's hard to translate into a gameplay experience in a map that might only be like 2 kilometers square or 4 kilometers square.
It's almost like we would have to make a whole new game
Yeah.
based on being a Quetzalcoatlus.
What about
Uh,
anything else like a pteranodon or a pterodactyl or anything like that?
I think again, it's kind of one of those things is that flight and the amount of space it requires is just kind of one of those things that takes what you're doing and adds this whole new world of
Mm-hmm.
complexity and development time and new considerations that aren't really nearly as problematic as if you're dealing with a land-based animal. So I think the safest answer I can give is that it's not that we don't like the idea of a pterosaur or any sort of flighted animal. It's just the amount of development energy that would have to go into it is really high. And that's kind of something that I think we need to be in a very, very secure place before we considered moving in that direction.
And I guess the last thing for about creatures is water creatures. I know you mentioned the mosasaur, but is it kind of the same thing as the air creatures? You're not really planning on that right now?
It's exactly the same. It would have
Yeah.
to be basically an entirely new game to
Mhm.
make aquatic creatures work as playable. They will be present in Saurian, but yeah, to make them playable, it would be an entirely new map. It would require an entirely new set of AI. It would require very different types of player controls. Yeah, it's not something we can think about right now.
Having said that, though, Brian, who is our animator, is very, very committed that one of our future expansions, should we ever move in that direction, is going to be Oceans of Kansas. So we love the idea of like playable aquatic animals. It's just a matter of sometimes you have to pick and choose and make sure that you do one thing well as opposed to doing a bunch of things like only so well.
The game, I'm assuming, is multiplayer, right? You're gonna have other people in the same map.
Primarily, the game. I mean, so we have a stretch goal on Kickstarter for multiplayer. At this rate, it looks like we'll get it. So it's likely that we will have a multiplayer mode. But I think it's important that we stress that the real place where we as game designers are creating the experience is in single player.
Yeah.
In multiplayer, it's going to be a chaotic sandbox, in the same way that in a game like The Isle, it's players really dictate their own experiences. Even if you have AI in there, players are going to do all sorts of stuff. So it's really in single player where we can use the AI to guarantee that all of the animals that you're around are acting the way that an animal realistically should. And in that way, it's really single player where the experience that we're designing is going to shine, I believe. But there should be at this rate, it's likely that there will be multiplayer.
So,
Yeah.
do you like form herds or packs with the AI creatures and families, or?
It kind of depends on what animal you're playing as, and
Yeah.
even more, it can even depend on what age of an animal you're playing as. We know that dinosaurs, for example, we have plenty of examples of juvenile dinosaurs that have been found in groups. We know that it's a fairly common behavior amongst dinosaurs to form age-segregated groups. So, like, you'll find juveniles living together, subadults living together, but when you get towards the adults in some dinosaurs, they are only ever found individually. And so that's kind of the interesting thing is that for our Tyrannosaur, for example, you will probably start off with siblings or, and other small animals that it's beneficial for you and these other AI or player entities to sort of form a loose group. But as you grow, it'll be progressively become more and more difficult to support yourself as part of a group. It's to your advantage in terms of being able to secure enough food to eventually start to move into smaller groups and eventually off by yourself.
Do you mate or have babies or anything?
Mating is, for any animal, reproducing is kind of the ultimate life goal. I guess you could say it's the top of your bucket list. And that's something that we do want to include as part of your gameplay experience in Saurian. Right now, when we're looking at pushing towards that first release and early access, the thing that we want to focus on is your day-to-day survival. Going back to that basic eat, drink, don't get eaten, and don't die at the hands of the environment or another AI.
To clarify that, though, yes, in the same way that, so as Joe was saying, mating is like, the kind of the pinnacle of an animal's life, passing on their genes. So it will be really important that we depict that in Saurian, but it is likely that it will not be animated. So while mating will be a mechanic, you are not going to be seeing graphic dinosaur sex in all likelihood.
Yeah.
I actually had a few questions about that. I wasn't going to ask, but
yeah. The process
that's usually what people, I think, mean when they ask us if there's going to be mating.
Yeah.
So it's like yes and no.
The process that gets you to the point of being ready to mate, things like courtship and proving to a potential mate that you're worthy of the effort, is definitely something we're going to spend a lot of time on for each playable. But the actual physical depiction or act is not something that's a big focus, because in most animals it's not terribly important for them either. They just do it.
So that sounds like it's going to be really in depth. Like you have to court, like your potential mate. You have to show your strength and like all that kind of stuff. That sounds crazy.
Yeah, that's where we want to go with it, and that's part of the reason that we're not really doing a whole lot of specifics on it right now, because it's going to take all of our attention, all of our dev attention, basically, to make sure this works out. And we need that solid platform to build off of first before we can get to that point.
Yeah, that's going to be a really big endeavor for AI. It's going to be like an entire subsystem for the AI. It's going to be really cool because it's going to be what allows us to really add character between the species in terms of their behavior, to make it set. You don't just lump all of the herbivores together. You can see that there's really distinct social structures and behavioral patterns between the different herbivorous species and stuff.
Do you?
By the way, Dustin, this is Henry. Henry's our AI program.
Okay, hello, Henry.
We kind of missed the introduction.
So I guess does everyone start as a baby, or do you pick like the age you want to be?
Essentially, at this point in the base version of the game, the idea is that everyone starts off as a hatchling or a young juvenile animal.
Okay.
And one of the things that we're going to explore is potentially one of the options out there is that if you play an animal through to completion from a baby all the way through adult,
You can pick.
and reproduce, you can have the option of selecting what growth stage you start at on a future playthrough.
Okay, that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
That's kind of like an achievement thing. People will be trying to get, all the way through every single creature, and then they can kind of pick what they want to do.
Yeah. And actually, we've toyed around with the idea of making each playable unlockable. So, like, if you start off, you have to play your way through one before you can play through the next one. And a lot of this is sort of things that these are ideas. They're not anywhere set in stone, but we definitely like the idea of the basic experiences starting as a baby and having to survive.
How hard do you think it's going to be to start as a baby and become, fully an adult and have children and stuff like that? On a scale, like if you could put it on a scale where it's like 10 is just absolutely ridiculous, and then 0 would just be you can sleep and it happens.
Well, go ahead, Henry.
I think it's a little bit too early to say that, and also because that's going to largely be a balancing question. It's going to be a question of which type of game mode that you do. And at this point, after really extensive debate between teammates, we've kind of decided that we're going to do 2 variants of single player, one of which allows reloading from save points and restarting the game from a specific stage, all these things like that are much more accessible, that make it so that death isn't a really big deal. And the second mode where you start as a baby and there's permadeath, basically.
Okay.
So in that case, the first mode that I was describing, regardless of the difficulty, you can be a little bit more careless just because it allows you to restart from save points. While the second one, in a game that has permadeath, even just a slight misstep, a slight lapse of attention or something can cause the entire game to be over. I think that's probably the most that we could say about the actual difficulty of the game at this stage.
One of the things also too that we always try to do when it comes to deciding anything about gameplay is going back and looking at what fossils and scientific data tells us. And there was a study that came out this past year actually that looked at a dinosaur called Maiasaura, and we have a lot of bones of Maiasaurus, so many that we can actually look at its population dynamics. And when you ask how hard is it going to be, from this study, we know that if you had 100 Maiasaurs that were all born at the same time, 90% of them would be dead by their first year of life. So,
oh wow,
yeah, the entire Mesozoic and Hell Creek in particular is one big baby death fest, you could say.
Well, that's a great selling point there, dude.
I'm gonna title my video "Baby Death is Confirmed in Saurian."
Or if you're a predator, it's one big smorgasbord, I guess you could say.
Yeah. If you do multiplayer, like, do you have plans on doing any sort of like deathmatch things, like kind of like the Isle or whatever?
I guess one of the things about the Isle right now is that it's very much an open sandbox where you can just pick whatever you want and jump into it. And I think to a certain extent we want a more controlled multiplayer experience than that. And also the fact that we're going to have AI interacting with player-controlled animals also kind of throws a wrinkle that the Isle doesn't have yet.
Yeah.
So I don't think obviously our goal is not to have an experience where you jump in and the first thing you encounter is a kill on sight predator controlled by a person. We want to make sure that playing multiplayer mimics as much as we can the single player experience. But like Henry pointed out, the nature of playing with other people is just that, things happen that aren't terribly realistic and based on what we know of actual Mesozoic ecosystems, where Saurian will really shine in terms of being as true to life as we can is the single player experience.
Can you die from old age?
Please let me take this one.
Go ahead.
Yes. So this has been a personal thing that I've been campaigning for a lot, and we've had so many arguments about it on the team. And basically the way that we resolved it was exactly with those modes that I was mentioning earlier. Basically, for the kind of casual mode where there's save points and stuff, and it's not really meant to be a really intense challenge, we're not going to have old age.
Okay.
You can just play indefinitely. because that's what seems like it would make the most sense to players that would want to play in a game mode like that. On the other hand, in the permadeath game mode, I think we have all agreed that eventually there will be death by old age if you're able to survive long enough. But
Yeah.
given that at a certain point, when you reach a certain point of old age, your physical capabilities will start decreasing, you'll be weaker and stuff, and it will become more and more likely that you'll actually get killed before you reach old age. But yes, for this game mode, we, I believe, have agreed that old age is something that we would like.
Yeah.
Although
Yeah.
it'll take a very long time. It's not something that you're gonna have to worry about or like
Yeah.
feel really concerned about early on in the game.
Yeah. And again, kind of going back a little bit to what we know about dinosaurs is that many different types of dinosaurs did not live terribly long. That's one of the things that many people think is that, giant dinosaurs are hundreds of years old. The oldest dinosaur that we know of that has been reliably aged was about 28 or 29 when it died. And most of the most dinosaurs that we've done like really in-depth studies of how they aged were fully grown and starting to actually exhibit signs of old age, things like arthritis and joint inflammation at about the age of 8 or 10. So they really lived short, fast, intense lives.
I can just imagine like playing the game, and then I've spent all this time or whatever in the hardcore mode. I've survived. I've had babies. Like my life is complete, and then I'm just dead. I die from old age. It's it.
Something takes you down.
Yeah, or something takes me down.
Which is probably more likely. But
Yeah.
the reason why at least I personally was drawn to the idea of death by old age is that I think it circumvents a problem that a lot of open world survival games has, which is just a lack of end game, a lack of closure to your story. Like I've had plenty of survival games where I get really good, I get all my stuff stockpiled, I'm doing great, and then just my game ends because I get bored because there's nothing left to do. Well, this way we can kind of guarantee there is a game, there is an end game, there is a sense of closure to your story. And in that way, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Walking with Dinosaurs, like the Big Owl thing, where we follow the entire life cycle of this animal. There's a clear beginning, middle, and end. It's a very structured experience, as opposed to just kind of not having an ending, which is, I think, a trap a lot of open world survival games fall into.
I had a question from somebody that asked, is there going to be like seasons? For example, like in Hell Creek, are you going to have like summer and winter and stuff like that you can play in, or with different challenges, or you haven't really thought about it yet?
Well, actually, seasons are one of the things that we've wanted to include very early on. And what's kind of cool about the Hell Creek Formation is that 66 million years ago, the Hell Creek Formation right now is located in like South Dakota, North Dakota, and Montana. 66 million years ago, continents hadn't moved as far as they had today. And if you actually look at the latitude and longitude they were located at back then, they're at about the same latitude and longitude as like Winnipeg and Churchill, Manitoba. And what that means is that you have this environment that is kind of like northern Florida in terms of how warm it is and like general like foliage and stuff. But for 6 months out of the year, you have less than 8 hours of sunlight. And for the other 6 months out of the year, you can have more than 16 hours of sunlight. And so there's this really weird combination of a subtropical ecosystem with an almost near Arctic light cycle. And what that ends up meaning is that in addition to having a lot of darkness in one season, a lot of light in the other, you have very distinct rainy seasons versus dry seasons. And we know that leaves in Hell Creek actually changed color and fell off the trees. So, I mean, lots of people have this idea that dinosaurs lived in this like permanently green, palm-covered landscape. And really what will be really cool when we get around to it is that for part of the year, you're going to be walking through a cold, for not quite cold, but it'll be like a barren, dark landscape with no leaves on a lot of the trees and hungry things in the woods looking for you.
Yeah.
It's kind of got a really kind of creepy vibe to it built in.
Are you guys going to add any I have a question that says, are you guys going to add any different types of the same creatures? Like I feel like I already know the answer because you have a certain area, right? So there's probably maybe not two different types of T-Rexes in the same area, or ankylos or anything like that.
We do actually have two different types of Ankylosaur. They're
Okay.
they're not terribly closely related to each other, but again, we know that both of them were there based on fossils. What we do kind of have, and this is another one of the stretch goals that was unlocked within the past 2 weeks, is individual variation. It's kind of like the potential for animals to have like slightly different skull shapes, different coat patterns, different body builds. And we also have a stretch goal that covered like genetic variants. So you could potentially encounter an albino tyrannosaur or
That would
a
be cool.
melanistic tyrannosaur and stuff like that. So it's not really that there's different types of animals. They're really what we're trying to show is like just how varied a population of dinosaurs could be in terms of like their general appearance, but all basically having that common connectedness as a species.
I guess I have a few extra questions, just a few final questions. But before we do that, do you guys have anything else that we haven't covered that you'd like to like tell me about, or?
Going forward, it's for us, it's just really cool that there's this many people who have been as drawn to our concept and idea as there have been. And I think for some of us, it's still sort of like sinking in that we've hit all of these stretch goals and we're just now coming up on halfway through
Yeah.
our Kickstarter. And it's like, really exciting to think that we could be doing really well at this, and that there's a whole bunch of potential open in the future in terms of what we could potentially do.
I
So,
mean, I have no doubt that Saurian is going to do well. I mean, I feel like it's a great concept. It seems like so far, just based on talking to you guys, the videos I've seen and the screenshots, it seems like it's going to be amazing, and I'm really excited about it personally. I think you're going to get a lot of coverage on YouTube from people besides me, and then I think it's going to be big on YouTube in general, and then it's going to be probably a Steam hit for sure. And I really hope that it is very successful.
yeah,
From your
that's-
lips
you very
to
much.
God's ears, man.
Yeah. How'd you guys like who started Saurian? Like, how'd you guys eventually come up with the idea? You're like, yeah, I really want to do this.
Okay. Well, you picked the right person to talk to, because Saurian is basically my baby, 5 to 5.5 years in the making. I was actually in college, and I had just gotten like a laptop that was capable of playing games, and I started playing a bunch of different games. I really got into playing the Creature stage of Spore. I played the PC version of Jurassic Park Operation Genesis,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a lot of fun playing a game called Jaws Unleashed. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that, but it's like basically set in the Jaws movie universe, and you get to be the shark. And
That sounds awesome.
it was a pretty cool game. Its camera was like the biggest detraction from it. The camera almost made it unplayable at times, but it had a lot of really engaging ideas behind it. And excuse me, it was kind of from those mixed experiences that I wasn't quite getting the full experience that I was hoping for. And it was sort of one of those things I kept thinking about. Wouldn't it be neat if you had a game, an open world game like this, where you could play as a dinosaur? And I mean, the other game I played a lot of around that time too was like Red Dead Redemption. And just the idea that, imagine what it'd be like to be playing in a game of Red Dead Redemption's size and quality, except you're a dinosaur.
Mm-hmm.
That's was kind of one of those big motivating ideas for me. And from that, I kind of took the internet and explored what other games were out there. And one of the ones that I encountered was Primal Carnage. And I eventually became a forum moderator and QA tester for them. And it was through that experience that I met several of the people who are on the team now, like Jake, who's our modeler. Tom is the other half of the research team, along with me, and there's more than just the two of us. We're the core of that. And he's our map designer. Aaron, who's another one of our tech artists, all sort of came together based on this idea that, how cool would it be to treat dinosaurs as real animals living in a real ecosystem as a game experience? And from there, it's just kind of been putting this idea out there in different places and letting people know that, hey, this is a cool idea we have. We'd really like to see where we can go with this. And I mean, Henry and Halfjack are two of the actual later additions to the game. If you guys want to
Hey,
explain how
don't
you
call me a later addition. So I mean, what was kind of amazing was, and I know I'm not the only one this happened for, is that I wanted to basically do this exact game completely independently, or at least if not this exact game, a game where the emphasis was on writing AI for dinosaurs that made them behave like believable animals. And I actually switched from a film major in college to a computer science major with the express goal of making a game like this. So later on in my college career, it was like really amazing when I saw this post from this game called Saurian asking for a programmer, and I just started learning Unity a few weeks before, and I was like, hell yeah. I know that the exact same thing happened with Brian, our animator, where he'd actually much more so to him, because he basically created a game design document for a game exactly like what Joe and Jake and Tom were creating.
Yeah,
And
that was one of
they
the really
just kind
cool
of
moments.
spontaneously met up, and
Yeah,
we're like, yeah, we're trying to make the same game.
yeah, and it was just kind of one of those things that Brian fit naturally, like, right into things because he's a fantastic animator, but he also had done a lot of thought about game design that we had done some thought on, but when we kind of put our ideas together, we had a much more complete document and a much stronger idea because of it. Halfjack, I think, and not to single you out too much, but you're like the newest member of the team here.
Yes,
I mean,
yes. I've been trying to make a prehistoric, an accurate prehistoric game, but with with Unity, but it was it was set much earlier. It was the Devonian Ocean, and it was a time travel game. So the kids would pilot a little sub around, and they would have to travel. They have to figure out when they are in geological time, so they know how to get home. And that kind of fell through because we all had to start like getting real jobs, and so so when I read about these guys, I was like, oh my gosh, these guys are like my people.
Yeah.
So I contacted them, and it's about what, 3-4 months ago now, 3 months ago.
yeah,
And yeah. So
yeah, it's kind of crazy how people just kind of gravitate together. They all like have kind of like the same goal and same dream, and they just meet each other and they make it happen. That's
and
awesome.
I definitely think because we've had that shared love of wanting to do dinosaurs as real animals and portraying them as not just movie monsters, that some of us have very different personalities from each other, but it's always fun to get together. I mean, like Henry and Jake and a couple other guys like play games all night long when they're done programming for the day, or when they've done whatever work they set out to do on Saurian for the day.
I mean, really, it's one of the amazing things, and I frequently just step back and think about how amazing it is, because I think it's pretty unique to our game. A lot of other games, even indie games, the motivation for the team getting together is that one person makes a call and is like, hey, there's going to be money involved or something. It's not literally just, hey, we can't promise you any money, but here's an idea. Like, if you're into it, like, come help us. And that's how it's been for years now. It's just people who kind of independently came up with this idea, working together for free because they really believe in it. I think it's something really special.
It's the coolest group I've ever been a part of.
How many people's on the team? Like just in total, really?
15?
We've got somewhere between 12 and 15.
Okay.
That's the thing. I'd have to sit here and like count my fingers to give you a total number of
Yeah.
people who are involved, but I think it's about 15 people at this point in time. And it's all just people who've just been like, "Hey, I want in on this."
Yeah. I want in on it right now. Just let me play. Are you guys gonna do any like pre-access, or? I mean, I saw there was a Kickstarter thing where you can get the $60 tier and higher, and that's the one that I'm going to be getting. Where I think it's pre-access to everything before everyone else.
Yeah, it's a little bit of like a closed beta, I guess you could say, in the point that what we're going to be.
I guess it would be, since we're doing alpha release, it's a closed alpha.
Yeah, but it's basically the idea that we've ironed out the majority of the bugs by the time it's ready to go for people, and it's kind of a chance to do a little bit of last minute bug cleanup while you guys have fun running around and
Yeah. And
the
of course,
basic version of it.
for you lovely fellas on YouTube, that's early content for you. You get to jump the gun on that one.
I'm going to be playing as a raptor, a Dakotaraptor, and just like trying to kill everything.
Well, that's good, because that's the first thing you get to play as.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Are you doing green light, or you trying to have like the game released by that time, or?
I think we're definitely going to pursue green light. It's just we have to get to the point where we're much further along and we feel we've got something solid that's close to being ready to go.
I mean, to be fair, like the stuff that gets on Greenlight currently, like we could get on with the current trailer that we have, but like we're gonna wait until we're much farther along in development before going through Greenlight. And
Okay.
Yeah, just that's one of the other things too is I speak periodically with other people who are game developers and working on their own projects, and as awesome as Steam is, you really need to pay you have to have somebody who's solidly devoted, to basically managing your Steam community, and that's true of any platform you have. And I think at this point in time, we'd much rather focus on just game development than rather than trying to explain to people, well, we're still working on this. It takes a while. Here's how game development works.
dude,
And
if
Yeah.
we're on Greenlight, dude, have you even seen some of the stuff that gets through Greenlight? Like we would not have a problem. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah, like I just
Well,
saw a
I-
game called Sperminator,
Yeah.
and like you're playing as a sperm.
I wouldn't think
Okay.
you guys had a problem. I was just wondering if you were going to take that approach or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes, definitely. We are going to sort of explore other options alongside of it. Obviously Steam is probably the most realistic way to release this game to a large number of people, but we definitely recognize that people are not universally fond of Steam. There are some people who don't want anything to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're definitely going to look into how we can accommodate people. So no promises at this point. We're still in the investigating stage, but it is something we're aware of and want to try and address.
Okay, well, my very, very last question is: are you guys going to devote a meat creature and name it MeatyLock after me inside the game?
Done. Yeah.
Done. Okay, nice, nice.
Actually, we can name Jake's meat chunk after him.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I just want
If
to
you have
play
a
as some
logo, or
kind of.
if you have a logo or anything you want put on it, we can probably work that out too.
Yeah.
I'll write in a 1 in 100,000 chance that it just has your face on the meat instead of a meat texture.
Yeah. I'll send you photographs after this. Yeah, I just want to play as a big gelatinous slime meat monster, and I just want to start sucking up Dakotaraptors and just all kinds of stuff around the map. So
Yeah, sounds good to me.
yeah.
We'll have Meaty's build for that.
Yeah, just my own personal build. I'm the only one that can play it. That's I guess that's all my question, guys.
Yeah.
I'm
Very
sure
cool.
I'm sure there's some things that I didn't cover that there's people they ask those questions. But maybe I could talk to you guys one-on-one every once in a while, just be like, hey, is this a thing or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're in the Discord now. It's
Yeah.
real easy to get a hold of us. So
Yeah. This
got a
this
question?
Discord is completely public, right?
yeah.
Okay.
We've got two different channels right now, public chat. There's an off topic and there's one that's Saurian and Paleo related, and I can give you a link to both of those if you want to, when you put this up.
Yeah, I'll have a link to the Discord. We'll have a link to the Kickstarter, and it's going to be amazing. Hopefully, a lot of people will come to your game, back it, support it. They become part of the community. Everyone kind of helps out, and I really hope that this game becomes really successful because I'm really excited about it. So I appreciate
Thanks, man.
I appreciate your time, guys.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I guess is there anything you haven't released to the public yet? Just anything like that?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Oh, there's a lot of stuff.
Is there anything
we're-
you would like to tell me? Maybe.
There are things I can't tell you because they're not like the data that's been given to us is like proprietary to scientists. It hasn't been published yet,
Oh, okay.
and they're willing to let us work with it and sort of do game design with it so long as we kind of keep it hush hush until we actually launch. So there's a lot of cool stuff that's on the way, I guess. I mean, I've got a blog post all set to go regarding like the biggest dinosaur in Hell Creek is a hadrosaur called Anatosaurus. So that's probably going to be going live in a couple days here. So
I can tell you about this other secret, which is that there's going to be a secret game mode where you play as this giant gelatinous blob named MeatyLock.
yeah.
Dinosaurs. It's going to be a lot of fun. You'll love it.
That's crazy. I'm excited about playing that. You have to enter the cheat codes and stuff to get into it.
Yep.
yeah. Probably the Konami code for a start, and then we'll work from.
Yep. I guess that's everything, guys.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll
Great.
shoot you
Thank you.
over Discord links for that too.
Yeah, sounds good. I appreciate your time, and I'm probably after this I'm gonna do a big intro and talk. I'm gonna talk about like the Kickstarter and stuff like that before the video even starts. So because we have
perfect.
we have 51, almost 52 minutes right now. So